placed on you. When I'm ready, and not before.
This one will soon belong to me. Time to up the stakes. Grip of the infinite. Time bends to my will. Struggle or strangle. Time tethers. Tight tethers.
When I'm
Time
ready,
bends
and
to
not before.
my will. Struggle or strangle. Take this vitality boon. Grip of the infinite. Temporal tears. Take this vitality boon. Be healed and fight on! Grip of the infinite.
Into a crucible
Overall too quickly.
that stretches the sanity of the mind.
Hello and welcome back to Tanky Spiders. I've upgraded the build to the point that I'd say this is like its final phase. There was only one really big upgrade you may have noticed. This little thing called Progenesis. Well, I dropped a Nimbus earlier. I did a bunch of Uber bosses. I haven't really had a chance to come back and upload more. I've been working a lot more recently and had some other stuff going on, so I'm just now getting to a place where I can make a good video. I no longer want to call this situationally Tanky Spiders, and I've been dogging on this build a little more than is appropriate. And because the question of, is it tanky? The answer to that is fucking absolutely. This is an extremely tanky build. What it is not is totally immortal against anything you can throw against it. What's crazy right now in this league is what you can do with wisps. Like, we're looking at just under 4,000 wisps here, which is like below average if you were trying to get wisps, but considering it's a Chimera map, it's a Guardian map, if you juice up Guardians or Elder Slayers, you can see crazy stuff. With Vaal Arctic Armour, I uploaded that video if you saw it earlier. With Vaal Arctic Armour, a cheesy ass skill, I was able to tank Maven Brain Bomb, which is over 300,000 elemental damage of a hit, which is absurd. Which, like, even without that was with Progenesis. Without Progenesis and Vaal Arctic Armor, I was able to tank Uber Cyrus Giga Meteor. Again, insane. These are designed to be one shot on nearly any build, boss abilities, and you know, with enough defenses set up, you can tank it. You can take like 600 damage for something like that if you really layer things up. And with like an 8,000 juiced Elder Slayer with Vaal Arctic Armor on, you can still get one shot by like just Baron. Not even his dot, just when he smacks you once, with like, if it's like 6,000 blue juice or something. These wisps do crazy things to maps. So I've been judging this build by an absurd standard. Realistically, you would need an extremely high budget build to tank those kinds of hits. The fact that an Elder Slayer with wisps is dealing more damage than than fucking Maven Brain Bomb without even like neg resist mod on the map, that's fucking silly. So for the vast majority of situations, for going through this map, I didn't get any detonate corpses strong boxes, but I've literally sat on every single detonate corpse strong box that I found just to see if it ever does kill, and I've not died once to detonate corpses strong boxes. This is at the level of a very stacked Aegis Aurora type build, and to be realistic, I'm very happy with the defenses. It's just that with the wisps, if you really try as hard as possible to juice up your maps, you can eventually find things that will kill you, especially before Progenesis. After Progenesis, that bar climbs up a whole lot more. And again, because of the setup, the sustain is able to beat out the Progenesis and the Petrified Blood degen, and to the point that you're virtually immortal as long as nothing is one-shotting you. It's a very similar setup to a really good Aegis Immortal. And I'd say if you're not counting the Progenesis, it's very hard to beat budget-wise. So, well, real quick, I'll go just do another kind of just an overview. If this is the first video you've seen of mine about this build, using Arcali's Fang, that summons your spiders, and comboing that with the Squire, which for whatever reason this league is still 2, maybe 3 divines. This corruption would be the best to get if you can. Fizz damage taken from hits is chaos, but that's going to cost a little bit more, but it's worth it if you can get it. Not necessary if you can. And this will be your offensive, of course. So spiders, they deal chaos damage. You summon them by getting kills. You have to use Writhing Jar to trigger some kills. You saw what I channeled was Divine Ire using cast while channeling and Desecrate. The spiders only crawl out at corpses, so you need to count as having gotten a kill, and to be near a corpse in order for raise spiders to trigger, which summons 2 spiders. It's actually not super consistent. Like sometimes you get all 20 right away, and sometimes you only get 8 or 14. It's a little random, but you have to use Writhing Jar while channeling your Divine Ire, because you've got pulses coming out some super fast interval. Those pulses will one-shot the spiders. And then in order to make that consistent and have them refresh consistently too, you do need Gravebind. I tried a non-Gravebind gloves, and it still usually worked, but not always. There was like a Drox situation where I had to try like 6 times in a row. My Writhing Jar was out of charges, and I wasn't getting any spiders, and I don't know what was wrong. Like, I don't see theoretically how those spiders were dying without the kills being credited to me, but it was happening. So Gravebind, I'd say, is actually necessary here, even though the stats on Gravebind are not that great. However, it does let you take advantage of Oriat's End. Not a necessary item, but an extremely nice item to have. The resists don't matter at all. You should be capped without Oriat's End. You're only using this for the explosion, for the map clear. What you can do against big bosses, invitations, you can swap this for a quartz flask or maybe a granite's flask. There's not really a lot of great flasks to choose from. Maybe you just go with an elemental flask like Sapphire, or not Sapphire because you want Taste of Fate, but you know, maybe like a Topaz or a Ruby flask just to get a little more, you know, if you're up against Syrian Exarch, you know, maybe a Ruby flask would be nice to take instead. But whatever you want, you can slot this in during bosses. You know what? Progenesis was not the only upgrade. I'll also mention one more. When I finally got my 3rd charm socket, I went ahead and grabbed one of these. These charms are pricey. 3 divine just for the single mod of flasks gain a charge every 3 seconds, but believe me, it's worth it, especially in boss fights. So this would be kind of a longer term plan, right? And I'll come back to this, but I've got like the basic setup here, POE, with just example items where everything's where you need it, just kind of all the essentials put together. It's not budget in terms of like you can just build it out of nothing. It's not, you know, it's nowhere near as budget as the bare bones of Rakiata's Dance was, but these are all the essentials, what you would want to aim for by like level 90 if you had some currency saved up. And a build like this can certainly farm. So you know, even before you get your items, you can kind of just wing it, and spiders still are really good. The only Arcali's Fang and Ancient Skull are enough to clear lower tier maps on their own with junk rares. But you'd want to aim for the general setup. So I'll come back to that in a moment. So it's Arcali's Fang and the Squire. And that's your offensive setup with Despair for your curse. And the Spectres are literally just the 2 Dark Marionettes. The ones that just respawn infinitely. They never die permanently, so you don't have to worry about building up their defenses whatsoever. Their resists aren't capped. They don't have any extra life. It doesn't matter at all. They just respawn. And that's good enough to keep Feeding Frenzy going. And that's good enough for an uptime. They take like a second or 2 to respawn. So if both of them are dead at the same time, then you wouldn't get your benefit from Jinx to Juju. That 10% of the damage you take from hits goes to the Spectre's life instead of you. But I don't know if I've seen a time where I died and my Spectres were dead. Like, it's more than good enough, more than consistent enough to take advantage of Jinx to Juju. So since they're just respawning, they can always keep the Feeding Frenzy buff going, and you don't have to build anymore into your minion tankiness. It's a really nice thing about this build that you don't need any of the expensive new Affliction Spectres. If there was one you wanted to use, but you would need to put in more effort and take some stuff out to have room to keep them alive, there's a new Spider Spectre that adds some chaos damage, but I looked at it, it wasn't that much extra damage. It's not worth the effort, in my opinion. And then you're just squeezing in your Flame Dash and your Despair into the same 4 link because Feeding Frenzy doesn't affect either of those. Alright, so that's basically the offensive setup. The defensive setup, since we have our shield used by the Squire, which is not a particularly defensively strong shield, we've got to find a way to set something else up. And it's all going to start with Divine Flesh. So this is a keystone you get from a glorious vanity conquered in the name of Zabakwa. And that keystone, number 1, all damage bypasses energy shield, so you don't care about energy shield. You can't use energy shield. You actually want your energy shield to be as low as possible, but we'll come back to that. Half of the elemental damage you take, including dots, is taken as chaos damage instead, and then it gives you some maximum chaos resist. So in order to take advantage of this, basically you're just going to want to stack as much chaos resist as possible and get the maximum as high as possible. We've got the maximum chaos resist pushed all the way up to 90%, and the way to achieve this is with one of the nodes that you can get off of Glorious Vanity, Cult of Chaos. That's just another 1, so we're at 81% max. We need another 9%. Pretty much the only way to get your remaining 9% max chaos resist is Born of Chaos off of the Chaos Resist Small Cluster Jewel. So, 2 points. You can see they're not the cheapest thing in the world. However, let me see what level. It doesn't need to be a high level. So, if we ignore Born of Chaos, we just say maximum 2, and we don't care about item level, you can see that you can just buy the jewels that you need and then just use alteration orbs. And literally the only thing that matters is getting Born of Chaos. So if you've got a pile of alteration orbs, you can craft these yourself without having to spend your 50, 60, 80 chaos orbs. It's not too hard. I didn't. I got these when they were a little bit cheaper when I got them, like 40, 50, 60, but either way is fine. Spend a little more time and save a lot of money, or just if you have the money, go ahead and buy them. One more thing about Glorious Vanity, I'd say it's pretty much crucial to make sure you get one good node here. This is the Faith and Steel notable. It's an Armor and Energy Shield cluster with an Armor and Energy Shield mastery, and on that mastery you get another 10% of fizz damage from hits taken as chaos. Again, we're cranking up that chaos resist all the way to 90% and overcapped, so we can, cover for things like despair. And then you get to shift some of your physical over to chaos. And in order to find an example Elegant Hubris, I can't call it Glorious Vanity, this is where you're going to use the calculator, find Timeless Jewel. You've got Jewel Socket selected and filter nodes. So you'll see we've only got these nodes in the whole circle selected. Filter nodes is only going to look at that. So you literally just point your Faith and Steel here and your Divine, Divine Flesh. Choose the Conqueror, Zabakwa, Glorious Vanity, Socket, the Agnostic, and then you can go to search for node. And just to get your feet off the ground, only look for Cult of Chaos, filtering the nodes, and go search. And here's a list of Glorious Vanities that put Cult of Chaos on Faith and Steel. You know what though? The Chaos Resist on Cult of Chaos does have a roll, so I guess these ones at the top are better, but realistically, literally any one of those numbers is bare minimum. On top of that, though, there are other good nodes you could look for. Like, obvious one is Hierarchy, some minion damage, maybe some other cults if you want, but I wouldn't recommend. Maybe, probably the only other one I would look at is Ritual of Flesh. You get some max life and some regen. But I even got a couple of ritual fleshes, and they weren't really worth taking. Like 7% life for 2 points is not actually that efficient. That's 3.5% life per point. And you'll notice I don't care about the armor. This build does not stack armor or block or energy shield, of course. All damage bypasses it anyway. We've got most of our incoming damage shifted over to chaos, or a lot of it. And then we're wearing doppelganger guys. So this is a body armor that can roll up to 40% on this mod, 40% less physical and 40% less chaos damage taken. That's hits or dots. While sane, it grants you this unhinged skill. All you got to do is just not use the unhinged skill. Just don't even put it on your action bar, and you will always be sane. You will always have 40% less physical and chaos damage taken while sane. Massive defensive layer there. And on top of that, of course, you get your 10% regen over 1 second while hit. This does not stack. It just kind of either refreshes or just waits, runs out, and then triggers again. Either way, it's really consistent. It just doesn't stack. You know, if you get hit 100 times, you're only still going to be regenerating 10% per second at most. And honestly, that's most of the defensive. Well, that's most of the damage reduction, except for where are we at? Petrified Blood. So Petrified Blood, of course, keeps you down to half life, and then applies a massive damage reduction to damage that would take you below half-life. And then most of the damage that's prevented is lost over 4 seconds instead. And what we want to do is, well, first off, we can take advantage of being at half-life by reserving a chunk of it. So we're going to go ahead and use Arrogance support with Arctic Armor and lower level Precision and Vitality. Precision, you just want to get leveled up to the point where POE tells you that your minions are at accuracy cap. I'm not sure what happens, but so check this out. We go to Precision here. You can see this is just a level 1 Precision, and we go to Calcs. Oh, it did it to me. I don't know what's going on. All right, so I'll have to update this before. Let's see. So POB, maybe it's just kind of buggy, but if we're gonna try to calculate what is the minimum level for Precision to see, you can raise spiders, show minion stats. At what point do they have a 100% chance to hit? Pump it up again. 100%. So you need a level 11 Precision, and you still have 52% unreserved life. You might as well go ahead and bump up the Vitality. Make sure you do have half-life. Yeah. Let's see. Unreserved 1796. 3592. We actually need to drop this down a level. And now we don't have any lost maximum life. So that's all that's really necessary. And Arrogance is going to be linked to all of this. Before that works, you do need the Reservation Mastery increased to 20% life reservation efficiency. Otherwise, you can't. I don't think you can even squeeze Arctic Armor in without that. And in this budget setup, we do go ahead and grab the Mana Mastery for Mana reservation efficiency. And let me turn down the music a little bit. All right. So how do we beat out the degen from Petrified Blood, and then later, if you can afford it, Progenesis? Bloodnotch rolls up to 60%, but you know, 50% roll, the better one you can afford, the better. But you know, and Immutable Force, and this Energy Shield Mastery. So if you haven't seen the setup before, Bloodnotch, if a stun is hitting you, you're gonna recover a big portion of it, recovered just instantly. And in order to make sure that you're stunned as often as possible, we've got very low energy shield. You just need 1 energy shield mastery. Using the mastery, stating that your stun threshold is based on 60% of energy shield instead of life. basically, since the energy shield pool is so much lower than your life pool, you're much more vulnerable to be stunned. You'll find yourself being stunned pretty much all the time, anytime you're under fire. And then we take Immutable Force so that the stun duration on you, this rolls up to 1,000, but it only needs to be like 700%. Like, you really don't need it. There's breakpoints, but it's almost no difference. Honestly, I haven't tried a 500% version of this, but even like 700% is still fine. And we go ahead and grab Life Recoup over here, and it really helps to have some Life Recoup on one of your rings. Alright, so all this together actually creates a very strong setup. Well, first off, we have massive amounts of just straight reductions of incoming damage. And on top of that, we are recovering so much against the degen from the hits that we've taken without any armor, hardly any armor, without any evasion or block chance hardly. We're still just over-sustaining. You saw we were just standing still and taking tons and tons of hits. Before you have Progenesis, and let's say before you're level 97, let's say you're 93, level 90, level 95, whatever. As you build a larger life pool, you will feel that threshold get higher. And then instead of playing stupidly and egotistically, rest in peace, Mumba, you actually just play like a normal character, and you will just feel extremely tanky. And you know, on Animate Rockiata's Dance, I felt like that character was squishy because, again, I'm testing it against these crazy wisp maps. On this character, I can just like walk through detonate dead situations. I can just stand still and wait for things to die. I can loot without looking at what's coming. The only things you really need to worry about when you're rolling your maps, cannot regen is a bit of a pain, but it's still doable. You got to swap in a hybrid flask. Neg resist maps are rough because that applies to your chaos resist, and so a big part of the build, like if you have lower elemental resists, that's, you know, not that bad, but lower elemental resists and chaos resist, you really start to feel that. Crit mods on the maps with blue wisps, that can be really painful. And then especially just anytime you put a lot of wisps on an Elder Slayer, the Elder Slayers hit extremely hard. Like I said, I saw a Baron kill me with Vaal Arctic Armor up, with Progenesis up, one shot by Baron, and that's on the same character in the exact same situation where Maven Brain Bomb was tanked. Absolutely bonkers. What the fuck? But tanky, worth being called tanky, absolutely. And even without the Progenesis, for the budget, I'm gonna say it's probably really hard to put something this tanky with this much damage. So at this point, with pretty good, with everything about as max as it can be without going extremely crazy, like I don't know how much more perfect the rares could be, but we're looking at about 32 million DPS. On kind of the basic setup version, you're looking at about 15 million DPS, but that'll just go up as you buy Awakened gems or get better clusters or just more skill points to spend. On this version, you're still looking at like a 10k Fizzmax hit. You know what? I haven't even put in the flasks yet, so I'll be sure to do that. And 30k Elemental, huge Chaos Max hit. Like almost nothing hits that hard with Chaos damage. And you can see in this version, we're able to crank that up a lot higher, you know, almost 20,000, almost 40,000, over 40,000. That's using a quart. That's assuming these are on. If we don't assume these are on, you can see it's a little more tame, but most of the time, like especially in maps, these are going to be rolling. It's no problem. And I do got to mention, so whenever there's actually kind of a strategic reason to kind of learn what can kill you and what can't, so that you can hold still. Walk over and hold still. Flame dash, or not. Well, you're not stationary while you're dashing, but as soon as you get there, flame dash, you're always stationary the whole time. While you're stationary is when Arctic Armor gives you the damage reduction. Less fire and less fizz taken. Very strong. Vaal Arctic Armor, 90% less damage from hits, but a fixed number of hits, only up to 3. It also has a crazy duration, so if you tank something and you want to move and you aren't out of charges, you don't have to wait 10 seconds for Vaal Arctic Armor. You can just take the gem out and that'll turn it off, but it's kind of a pain. But Vaal Arctic Armor will allow you to tank some really crazy stuff, like regular Cyrus Meteor, of course. It's cakewalk if you do Ubers. You know what I haven't tested with Progenesis yet is Uber Eater of Worlds Slam, the big super slam. I need to test that. Oh yeah, and I did a bunch of Uber bosses over the past few days, and I want to say 8, maybe 9 Uber Mavens, and I always hated Uber Maven, and I do suck at the fight, but this character has been able to handle Uber Maven a lot better, and a few of those were even deathless, and I'll still screw up the memory game and shit sometimes. Like, I could never play hardcore. And I dropped another Progenesis. So now the character has a bunch of money. I might go for another build. I'm kind of want to play around with Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity with minion instability. I might try that. I'm kind of actually considering using Aegis Immortal on that. Aegis Aurora, not Aegis Immortal. We'll see. I was playing around with it in POB, and the max hits were a lot lower than I was hoping for, but it still has like this EHP of hundreds of thousands. But for some reason on this build, this EHP number is just super inaccurate. This EHP does not represent the recovery, not even close. Alright, I think I've covered everything, and I'd say, check if you're interested in this build, or by the way, if you want to use the Squire for anything else, this is the league to do it. The Squire is dirt cheap. You know what I always kind of wanted to try was Squire with like Cosprey's Will, and now we could do that with like Flicker Strike of Power. So maybe something like that. We'll see. Because I got over 100 divines to spend on a new build now, and Squire's so fucking cheap. Awesome. Yeah, so there'll be 2 POBs. One's kind of just like the setup. You could say it's budget, but it's still multiple divines requirement. Nothing in here is too crazy on the rares, like looking at 3 stats on the rares in a craft, right? Most of these items aren't actually expensive. Doppelganger guys does not need to be 6 link. No Enlighten in this lineup. And I've only got a level 3 Enlighten currently in the actual character. Charms, you're just looking at, one with some resist and one with the onslaught, right? You can get these pretty cheap. Just perfectly mid-roll on most everything, and like the bare minimum Glorious Vanity. And this is all set for level 90. So if you've got a little bit of money, you can probably already afford to put this together. If not, Argali's Fang, even without the Squire, is good enough to farm up a few divines in low-level maps, and then on from there. So, yeah. Let me know if you have any ideas on what to spend the divines on this character before I start doing another one, or if you have any questions, if you want to try it out, what you think. Thanks for watching.